I'd like to begin a series of videos on the environment. Pope Francis has encouraged us to take a look at various environmental issues, particularly through his encyclical letter Laudate Si, which was a groundbreaking work by Pope Francis to really address in a comprehensive way some of these issues relative to the environment. Pope Francis always speaks of the environment in very intimate, loving terms as our home. It is where we live, and so we have an obligation to take care of that home. As we look around today, what we're saying is, maybe we can do a better job taking care of the home. And there are different controversies back and forth about it, but it's good to kind of take a look at some of the issues that relate to the environment, discuss those, and see what we can do to make our environment better for everyone. Particularly, many of us are concerned, might be a little bit older in terms of, what are we leaving to our children? What are we leaving to our grandchildren? Are we doing our best? Are there ways we can improve? And so that great discussion continues. And it's a very important one, a very significant one, as Pope Francis has pointed out. Today, I'd like to take a look at one aspect of the environmental situation to really kind of, in my mind, show how complex the issue is. And that is the issue of sea polluters. We don't often think of sea polluters. We think of plastic pollution in the sea, obviously. But we think of pollution more to do with land-based situations like power plants, automobiles, trucks, factories, that type of thing. But it's very interesting to kind of maybe broaden our perspective and see how complex the issue is and how many areas of our life it touches. One of the things that's fascinating about sea pollution is the fact that 90% of our global trade is transported by sea. Uh, and of course, that becomes an issue in itself, that so much of the trade that goes on through the various countries is transported in that way. And many people looking at that might say, well, is there a better way to do our trade, or is there a better way to kind of eliminate some of that sea traffic and country to country? Is there a better way to organize our economy, to organize how we help one another, how we provide for our people? Certainly in areas of the world where there is no food, food has to be transported, we understand that, but is there maybe a better way of kind of doing things to eliminate some of that? But when you take a look at that in terms of pollution, a very interesting fact is that the sea transportation industry emits more carbon than Germany and the Netherlands combined. And we don't often think of that. We think of that, that they would be emitting that much carbon just from sea transportation. That is certainly a factor. If shipping were a country, it would be the world's sixth largest greenhouse gas emitter, according to the World Economic Forum. So if it were a country, it would be the sixth largest. So this is then a significant issue. Well, they're obviously producing a lot of emission, if they would be the sixth largest. And what can we do to maybe take a look at that issue, curb some of that pollution to make our air that we breathe better and safer, and to cut down on those greenhouse gases? The Works Shipping Council, whose members operate 90% of global container carrying capacity, They would like the International Maritime Organization, which is a UN body, to revisit its greenhouse gas regulations. So there's this, industry representative that's saying, well, you're setting these limits for greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of our industry, this is going to be very difficult. And then if we shut down this trade and people don't have the goods or they don't have the food, this is going to negatively impact an awful lot of people. So it becomes a rather significant issue in that sense. And what they would like is the same regulations for all. So this obviously becomes a very important issue because what if one country adopts these regulations, another country doesn't? Then that country that doesn't might have an advantage over the country that does because they're spending less money curbing the pollution so they can offer their service for less. They might get more customers that way. And so obviously it would create a very unfair situation. Uh, how much money would it take to fully decarbonize the shipping industry? The estimate is $95 billion per year to fully decarbonize that. It can be done, but that is a rather large cost. And of course, that cost would be passed on to those who consume the products that are being shipped, would lead to obviously higher prices, rising inflation. Inflation is a big concern always. So, how do we balance this out? Uh, the interesting thing about it in terms of the analysis is that yes, it would be a large investment, but in the long run, it could lead to lower costs. It will lead to lower costs because of different, concerns with regard to fuel and fuel costs, which of course, are going to be the huge factor here. So sometimes that initial investment might seem rather big, might seem almost impossible, 95 billion a year to meet. But if we look at the situation long term, and if it does lower the costs of shipping and make shipping more effective, less polluting, helps our air, all of that. And then, of course, what are the environmental costs in terms of that? So when the pollution is reduced, less greenhouse gases, less, storms and other situations that might occur as a result of greenhouse gas emissions, factoring all of those very significant costs into the situation, you see that ultimately it could lead to a much larger savings. So this is an interesting issue, an issue, frankly, that many people don't consider the idea of the sea polluters, but it shows us the complexity of the situation in terms of the environment and many factors that we must deal with. And we will continue in our series to look at some of those other factors so that we can work towards an environment that is obviously better for all.